moving on to the next Liberal NDP expert, and I'm going to assume the NDP called this person, but who even knows? Could be the Liberals because he's quite friendly with the Liberals. It's Fae Johnstone, my muse. He testified at the Status of Women Committee about the dangers of conservatives who espouse views that comport with reality. Let's watch this, and while they're watching, this is a good reminder for me to order some Crest White Strips.
I would challenge, bluntly, any Conservative member of Parliament on this committee to look me in the eye and say that Pierre Poilievre's comments about gender ideology are anything short of propagating conspiracy and hostility towards queer and trans people. Those comments throw gasoline on the fire of rising hate, even as we see the freedom and rights of members of our community restricted. And many of us, as you have heard, terrified about the direction Canada is headed in. I would urge those same MPs to tweet their support of transgender rights, our rights to dignity, to freedom, and watch what happens next. Watch when your supporters turn on you and accuse you of supporting pedophilia, grooming, and all sorts of related filth, simply for supporting a minority's freedom. Watch as you are reprimanded by members of your leader's staff for showing your support for transgender people. I am scared of where we are headed if anti-queer and anti-trans hate rises. I know where it leads. It leads to acts of extreme violence that result in lost lives, made possible by a tsunami of everyday acts of exclusion, discrimination, and violence that will make life a living hell for transgender and queer people on this land.
Isn't he the guy who wore the, like, I want to stab TERFs shirt?
Or protect trans kids with a big knife on it.
Like, that's not your typical passive-aggressive threat of violence against people like me who don't think that people like Fae Johnstone should have unfettered access to other people's kids. It is not. There's nothing that is perpetrating violence against trans people by saying, you do not have a right to indoctrinate my kid behind my back.
And further than that, as it pertains to vulnerable people in every society across the globe, it is children and it is women. In that order, women and children are the most vulnerable sectors of every society across the globe. And just shut your eyes for a second and tell me if that's a man or a woman. He's not.
Listen with the sound off.
With the sound on,
the screen
close
off.
Your eyes.
Yeah.
And actually, you'd be doing yourself a favor.
Right.
Watching it with your eyes closed. But this is a man who was advocating for extra special rights and freedoms over top of everybody else's rights.
Right.
Just because you are safeguarding children and protecting the sex-based rights of women doesn't mean that you're hateful or that it'll end in a violent or extremist action. Like Faye likes to say, every day in Canada, women are being killed. That it isn't trans women because they are men, every single last one of them.
Right.
Trans women are men.
And this goes moreover to my point with the failings of the Conservatives at these committees. So the NDP or the Liberals called Fae Johnstone. Fae Johnstone is a federally funded activist. Fae Johnstone's entire racket is to take money from the federal government and then funnel that activism into the provinces where Trudeau is not allowed to be legislating. So in Alberta, the Fae Johnstones of the world are going to come down really hard on us on our recent past full slate of pro-fairness in sports laws. And Justin Trudeau cannot override the will of the provinces. So what Justin Trudeau is going to do is give money to Fae Johnstone to come to get us. And he does it with EGAL. EGAL is running the challenge against
Saskatchewan parents, yes,
Yep.
the Saskatchewan Parents Inclusion and Consent Law, the Saskatchewan Parents Bill of Rights. EGAL is right at the forefront of that challenge. And it's crazy the way that the federal government funds NGOs like EGAL, like Wisdom to Action, like
Queer Momentum.
like thousands of other LGBTQIA and pride-related organizations to do the dirty work that the government can't. Because the government can't come in and violate the rights of children and violate the rights of parents and do all of this dirty work. They can't violate our rights, but they can pay these NGOs to do it on their behalf. And that's exactly where your taxpayer funds are going, Canada.
Millions of dollars. For example, right now in Emo, Ontario, little Emo, that entire legal challenge at the Human Rights Commission, where the mayor now has to pay a fine, which I think is greater than his salary there. He basically is the mayor out of a labor of love. It's a town of 1,500 people being colonized by these outside activists who had their own pride parade. Mm-hmm. They had their own parade. They just wanted access to the town flagpole. Apparently, it's your human right to have the town flagpole fly whatever social justice flag you want. That's what the Human Rights Tribunal found. But that was a fully funded EGAL action, funded by the federal government to go after this little mayor, this town, and this mayor for just saying we want neutrality.
Yeah, we don't want to have to put up a flagpole in Emo. P.S. They don't even have a flagpole in Emo. We don't want that. And instead of...
by the way, I should tell you, the guy who brought that challenge doesn't even live in the community.
No, he's an outsider. Just like EGAL is an outsider to Saskatchewan challenging the Saskatchewan Parents' Bill of Rights.
Yes.
Yeah. No. It is unhinged, absolute craziness. And if conservatives, listen, if Doug Ford wants a piece of advice, it would be to replace or absolutely eviscerate your Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, because this is the reason why this happened to this poor, elderly 75-year-old mayor in Emo, Ontario. We need to eviscerate those human rights commissions and tribunals because they are getting right carried away.
I've got a couple of points to make before I forget them because my brain is just swimming. But this actually disenfranchises the people of Emo because they voted for that mayor. Yep. They re-elected him post-controversy. Yep. There are 3 councillors, one was the mayor, who were involved in the vote to say, actually, we want neutrality. And one of the councillors decided, this is way too much of a headache for the pittance we get paid. I'm not running for re-election. But the mayor and the other guy got re-elected. This is what the people of this town want. Mm-hmm. And we've got these outside activists coming and basically stripping them of their vote.
And so now they're saying, the outside activists are saying, right, not only are we taking $5,000 out of your bank account without garnishing it, like stealing $5,000 out of an elderly man's bank account, but they're also saying we want a full mea culpa online and we want the drag queen story hour in the Emo library, and we're not going to settle for anything less. This is,
he has to go to
re-education camp.
Yeah.
Could you imagine your grandpa getting sent to a re-education rainbow camp? Nothing could be more hideous. Doug Ford, do something about your Human Rights Tribunal. Do something about them. Drag them into line. And if they won't get dragged into line, then you need to eviscerate them and throw them on their asses.
And where are the Conservatives on the Status of Women Committee? Giving anecdotes about their trans friends. And
do not.
And you know what? Whatever. Maybe they do. They watched a documentary with Will Ferrell and his trans friend. Whatever. That's got nothing to do with any of this. Why aren't they calling, again, further to my point about Rachel Gilmore, Conservatives, why aren't you calling April Hutchinson to talk about the status of women? Why aren't you calling Coach Linda Blade to talk about the status of women?
Call any one of the thousands of Canadian women that object to having their sex-based rights erased by the LGBTQIA movement in these last 10 years. Mm-hmm. Ask any one of those women to testify. Ask the women in shelters who have had to share their shelter spaces. Ask the women in prisons who have had trans women invade their spaces in prisons, who have to serve time with trans women in prisons. There is no shortage of women that have been impacted by this, and yet
they call the dude.
They call a dude to testify in front of committee, and the worst part was watching the Conservative MPs listen and then repeat the Liberal talking points that we know so well. Well, I was listening to my trans friend. Well, I saw a Netflix documentary about this.
That's got nothing to do with any of it.
This is what we're basing. Well, it shows just how out of touch these Liberal MPs are.
They
Because
watched
if
a
this
Will
is
Ferrell movie.
on Netflix. P.S. Netflix is run by one of the most left-wing Democratic in the United States, Democratic supporters in the United States. So conservative MPs are being taken for left-wing propaganda via Netflix, and we're basing Canadian policy on this. Have we lost our minds? This is not going to go the way that they think it's going to go. Canadians won't have it, and we're just seeing a building tide.